shul, they called it that way. Okay, Aleph. In Yoni HaMiyuchet Shel Rosh Chodesh Shvat, this special idea, the unique idea of Rosh Chodesh Shvat, Mefurish b'Torah shebaksav, is explicit in the written Torah. Ba'ashli Asariyai Chodesh, in the 11th month. Shvat is the 11th month since Nisan, which is called the first month. Be'echad l'chodesh, on the first day of the month. In other words, the 11th month, the first day of the month, the Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Hoyel Moshe be'er is a Torah goymer. Moshe began to explain the Torah. Kalaima. Hascholas limud bir Mishnah Torah. It was the beginning of the study and explanation of the repetition of the Torah. All the detailed matters that were said in the four Chumashim prior to Chumash Dvarim, which is called Mishnah Torah, by Safas in Yom Chadashim, with the addition of new matters. In the way that he explained the Torah, B'shivim Lashon Pirush Lahem, in 70 languages he explained it to them. According to what it says, that these days are remembered and then they are done. In other words, by recalling them. So then this recurs again, moving, it's understood. This idea of what took place then is repeated every single year. Bagdama. And by prefacing, though who can say and who has the courage to approach and to comprehend even 1 of 1,000th of the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Still in all, the Alter Rebbe explains how the efforts could say a smidgen of it, a little bit of Moshe Rabbeinu's level shines. Both concerning the general Klal Yisrael, that in other words, there is in every generation, there is the expansion of Moshe Rabbeinu in that generation. So in every generation, there's one person that has the Moshe of the generation. And both concerning every single Yid, that there is in every single Yid a part of Moshe Rabbeinu. Kol nefesh v'nefesh Beit Yisrael yesh b'chinas Moshe Rabbeinu ol v'shalom. Every single soul from the house of Yisrael has in him from the level of Moshe Rabbeinu ol v'shalom. Until this actually becomes revealed, and the Rebbe brings it down, that it's brought down that it becomes revealed in the idea of even the year of Hashem, that is considered a minor thing for Moshe Rabbeinu, therefore it's considered minor for every single Yid. Let us skip over to the second paragraph on the second column. Moving for this understood, this idea is in in all generations, until this generation, when the Rosh Chodesh Shvat arrives every single year, Maschel Moshe Rabbeinu. So then Moshe Rabbeinu begins. And who is Moshe Rabbeinu referring to? Both. Is Pashtus of the Moshe Shebchol Dor V'Dor, the expansion of Moshe of every generation. In other words, the Nasi Ador of every generation. Ad lebchinas Moshe Shebchol Lechad Vech B'Yisrael, until the level of Moshe in every single Yid. Levayir Sinyoni HaTorah, he begins to explain the matters of Torah. What's the idea of explaining Torah matters? K'loimer, this means to say, Nesinas Koach Miyuchedes, a special empowerment, La'afotzes HaTorah L'chol Echad Vech B'Yisrael, to the spreading of the Torah to every single Yid. Uba'oifen the Ba'er, in the way of Ba'er, that's well explained, B'shivim Lashon, with 70 languages. What's the significance of explaining the Torah and translating it into 70 languages? Gam li Yehudi shenimtza b'maimed matzav she'ena shayach le'sa'ata lilmud l'havnes ha'Torah b'lashon ha'kodesh. Also a Jew that is at present in a state and situation that it's not possible at this particular time to study and to understand Torah in Lashon Kodesh, in Hebrew, and that's why therefore it's necessary to translate from the Torah in the language of the country that he's in, B'Loshen Am V'Am, in the language of nation and nation, B'Shivim Loshen, with 70 languages, Mekivan She'efshar Lahamtin At Sheyilmid Chila Loshen HaKodesh Chulu, because we cannot wait and say, you know what, don't learn any Torah yet. First learn Hebrew, first learn Lashon Kodesh, then learn Torah. No, you can't wait with that. He needs to learn Torah right away. And because he needs to learn Torah right away, we have to explain the Torah, we have to translate it into 70 languages. Oizbeis, bottom of the page. If we could add the idea of explaining the Torah, it's also and specifically concerning the inner part of the Torah. Also the ideas of the inner part of the Torah. They also are drawn down and revealed in a way of explained in understanding and comprehension. The Yisparnasun, which in Kabbalah it's called that you derive sustenance for it because it's ingested intellectually. How does it become ingested? How does it become something that sustains us like a parnasa, like a sustenance through the teachings of Chassidus Chabad? That was established by the Alter Rebbe that the day of his yahrzeit, the 24th of Tevis, you skip over the parentheses, was on the Sunday of that week in that year, that was completed in the upcoming, the Shabbos following it. Okay, this doesn't have to do with our year's Kviyas. Second paragraph on the page, this is also connected with the 10th of Shvat. The 10th of Shvat is included in Rosh Chodesh because we know Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month, is like we say, the head of the year, includes in it all the days of the year. The same thing, the head of the month, includes in it all the days of the month. How much more so is included in Rosh Chodesh, Hayom, Yechodim Shabbai, the special days, the unique days in it. Amongst the unique days in the month of Shvat is the 10th of Shvat, Asiri Kodesh, the 10th will be holy. Yom Heilula, the Kodesh is Moircham Yad Mur, the Sidareinu, the yahrzeit of my father-in-law, the leader of our generation. And we see this association of the Frierdiker Rebbe with the idea of the spreading out and making Torah available to everybody. The avodah that he did, the one whose yahrzeit is on the 10th of Shvat, he hoyel Moshe. Moshe began, which is the Moshe Rabbeinu Shebedereinu. The Frierdiker Rebbe is the Moshe Rabbeinu of our generation. Ba'eres HaTorah, he explained the Torah. Shekein al yadi nitvaisef oid yoser ba'oirach v'roicha v'ba'oimik b'shleimes ha'avona v'asag t'orskis Chabad. It was added and increased even more so in the length, breadth, and depth, in the perfection of the understanding and comprehension of the teachings of Chassidus Chabad. In addition to the fact, including and specifically B'Shivim Loshen Pirsha Lahem, that the Frierdiker Rebbe began the process of translating the Torah into 70 languages, Targum Inyoni HaTorah, translating matters of Torah. That he began the idea of translating the most deepest things, which is the teachings of Chassidus, in the language of every nation. Again, Hainu, this means, last paragraph, first column, even a Yid that at the moment finds himself in a state and situation that is called an other. Top of the second column, therefore, Hebrew is still a foreign tongue to him. And you have to turn this acher, this other, into a son. Like Rachel called Yosef, that Yosef Hashem li ben acher, Hashem should add and increase to me another son. Lasis me acher ben, Chassidus explains, it means to take the acher, the one that's outside, the one that's an other, and to make him into a son. So the same thing, a person that's in a state that he's so far, he doesn't know Lashon Kodesh. So he's like almost like an acher, and we're teaching him Torah to make him a ben. Yesh lilmoid ol hasber gam in yonei Torah Chassidus. We need to learn and we need to explain also matters of Torah Chassidus. What's Torah Chassidus? Torah Chassidus has to do with Yitzchak. Torah Chassidus has to do with the idea of Yitzchak. What Yitzchak means, chayk v'tainug, laughter and pleasure. We know delight is the highest soul power and it's connected with Yechidah Shebenefesh, just as Chassidus is connected with the Yechidah Sheb'Torah. So we're taking the Yosef, we're taking the Acher who doesn't know, and we are making him and transforming him into a son through sharing with him the delight, the laughter, the enjoyment of Torah, the part of Torah that gives us pleasure, the Pnimis HaTorah, Ba'ofen shel havana v'asagi, in a way of understanding and comprehension. Ad l'shleimus havana v'asagi l'fi erkei, we bring it down to the most complete understanding and comprehension according to that person's level. Shemevil de tainug, it brings to delight. Yitzchak meduber barucha b'svadish lifneza, like the Rebbe spoke about at length in a previous Farbrengen on Parshas Vaychi and Shabbos Parshas Shmois and Bitochon Chodesh Shevat and so on. We're going to skip over a little bit to the Shiur Tehillim of that the Rebbe is going to connect it with the Shiur Tehillim of Rosh Chodesh. 1 second. Or actually, maybe we'll go a little bit earlier. So let's actually go a little bit earlier than the Shiur Tehillim. We're going to go up to the top of the second column. He speaks about Parshas Va'era because that time the Rosh Chodesh Shevat was in the week of Parshas Va'era, not like by us this week that's in the middle of Parshas Bo. And over there in Parshas Va'era it speaks about Ve'evesi Eschem, that were brought into Eretz Yisrael. So the Rebbe says, top of the second column, V'inyan zeh Ve'evesi Eschem al haaretz, I will bring you to the land. Kosher gam Rosh Chodesh Shevat is also connected with the Rosh Chodesh Shevat. By Hibar Boim Shana, it was in the 40th year when of going out of Mitzrayim. Ba'ashti Asar Chodesh, in the 11th month, Be'echel Chodesh, in the first day of the month, Gomer. Hoil Moshe Bayers HaTorah Gomer. Moshe began to explain the Torah. Inyan the Bayers HaTorah, the idea of explaining the Torah, Loi Hoyerach B'Rosh Chodesh Shvat. It wasn't just on the day of Rosh Chodesh. It began on Rosh Chodesh, El Kemudish because of, but rather as it's emphasized in the pasuk, Rosh Chodesh Shvat Hoyil. And the Rosh Chodesh Shvat Hoyil means Hischil Moshe Bayers HaTorah. Moshe began to explain the Torah. Haschala Bilvad, only the beginning of the process. Shekein in Yazen Nimshach B'Meshach Kol Yemei Chodesh Shvat. This explanation of the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu began continued throughout the entire month of Shvat, Ad L'Shiva Ba'Adar Sheboi Nistalach Moshe, until the 7th of Adar, in which Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. Skip the parentheses to the next line. Shekein, why is this so? B'Yodish Miskar Vayom Sheboi Malu Yomavish Noisav, knowing that the day is coming closer and closer when all of his days are being filled. So that's why Moshe Rabbeinu, in preparation for the completion of his life, he started teaching and explaining Mishnah Torah, the repetition of the Torah, the ba'ofen sheyaspik l'sayim l'fnei stalkusa, in a way that he should have enough time to finish before his passing. V'nimtza comes out, in the Bayers HaTorah from Rosh Chodesh Shvat at Shiva Ba'Adar, that idea of explaining the Torah from Rosh Chodesh Shvat until the 7th of Adar, it was the final preparation to entering Eretz Yisrael, Behegdem Achiav Shari, as soon as possible after Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. That is when they entered Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, this was part of the process, like of entering Eretz Yisrael, was Moshe Rabbeinu's beginning to teach the Torah. So just like Moshe Rabbeinu's teaching the Torah was getting ready for his passing, which the passing was the step before Yeshua would lead the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael. In a similar vein, top of the next page, so too concerning the explanation of the Torah, of the revelation of the teachings of Chassidus Chabad, Hachel Madmur Azakin, beginning from the Alter Rebbe Bal Elul, the Chavdal Tevis, whose yahrzeit was on the 24th of Tevis, the explanation of the Torah, the way it's explained in the teachings of Chassidus Chabad, is also a preparation to my bringing you into Eretz Yisrael, just like Moshe Rabbeinu's beginning to explain the Torah was the beginning of the process to bring the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael, and that was like his last chance before he would pass away to impart upon them the Torah so that he should be able to enter Eretz Yisrael. So the same thing, the Alter Rebbe's explaining of the Torah is also a preparation for entering back Eretz Yisrael, Begula Asidollah Mashiach Tzidkenu, in the future redemption through Mashiach. Sharibias Mashiach Tzidkenu Hoyaydei Zeh Sheyafutzu Mayasach Achutza. The coming of Mashiach is through your wellsprings being spread outward. Beginning from the redemption of the Alter Rebbe on the 19th of Kislev. On the 19th of Kislev began the main part of spreading the wellsprings outward. Even though the Alter Rebbe began teaching Chassidus Chabad prior to his imprisonment, but after he was released from imprisonment, so then it took on a whole new level of spreading outward. Until the ultimate perfection of spreading the wellsprings outward. That was literally outward in all the ends of the globe. When the Alter Rebbe spread Chassidus outward, it meant he spread it outward, not just that it should be among Chassidim, but even those who were not yet Chassidim and so on. But physically, literally, geographically outward, who was the one that spread it around the world? Like my father, through my father-in-law, the leader of our generation, like the Frierdiker Rebbe testified in his times, and how much more so in our days, that all matters of service were already completed. All that's left is like when you put out the military for the parade, so the last thing that's left to do is to polish the buttons. The same thing, we are all ready for the coming of Mashiach. We are all ready for the great parade before Mashiach. Just that's left is to polish the buttons. Take from Yad Imdu Hachin Kulcham, and immediately, once those buttons are polished, you're standing all prepared, the Kabbal's Mashiach Tzidkenu, for the greeting and receiving of Mashiach. Now the Rebbe is going to connect it with the Shiur Tillim of Rosh Chodesh. Ois Hey. Yesh lahois v'lakasher kol anal im Shiur Tillim hayomi k'vi shenechel k'mei hachodesh. We can add and connect all of the above with the daily Shiur of Tillim, the way it's divided to the days of the month. Hashir the Rosh Chodesh Shem Aleph b'Chodesh Hu Aschol Sefer Tillim Ashrei Ish Gomer. The Shiur of Rosh Chodesh, which is meaning the first day of the month, is the beginning of Sefer Tillim, where we begin Ashrei Ish. Fortunate is the person. Even though we recite it every first day of the month, the first of Tishrei, the first of Nisan, the first of Tammuz, we always recite the first day of the month Ashrei Ish. But it has a special connection with the Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Kedisa Medrash, like it's brought down Medrash, Ramech Chosam Moshe Ashrecha Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu concluded with how fortunate the Yidden are. And also David, when he came to say praise, in other words, Tehillim, from the place that Moshe Rabbeinu stopped, from there David HaMelech began. And that's why he said, Ashrei ha'ish, fortunate is the person. Hainu she'ashrei ish b'aschol Sefer Tillim. When we say fortunate is the man, that's at the beginning of Sefer Tillim. Kosher im'ashecha Yisrael, it's connected with how fortunate are you, Yidden. Sheboi siyam Moshe Rabbeinu limud Mishnah Torah shehiskul b'Rosh Chodesh Shvat, that with that concept, Moshe Rabbeinu concluded the study of the repetition of the Torah of Chumash Dvarim that began on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So Rosh Chodesh Shvat has to do Ashrecha Yisrael, which is directly connected with the Ashrei Ha'ish that David HaMelech began. And then he goes on, V'hinei, Asher, the word Asher, and the same thing Ashrei, and the same thing Ashrecha, all the same words, Hu inyan hatainug. It's the idea of delight and enjoyment and pleasure. Like it says concerning the bracha that Yaakov Avinu gave Asher, it says, May Asher shmeina lachmai. From Asher, his bread is very fatty, in other words, very delicious. And he dips even in his foot. Moshe Rabbeinu said he dips even his foot in oil. Oil shows on richness and being rich and tasty. The koil b'chinas hakeser, the level of oil which floats up top of water, indicates a level of keser, ad b'chinas pnimis hakeser, until the highest level of keser. The Rebbe also explains in the footnote at great length that for those that like gematrias, which I know some of you like, that Asher is the numerical equivalent of 501. And 500 has to do with the idea of Hashem's name, because the Chazal say that Hashem traveled 500 years to acquire for himself a name, because the level of that's between the world and the upper world is 500 years travel. So Hashem traveled down here below a 500 year distance of travel to be able to acquire a name, and that's 500. So 501, the one is going on Hashem's oneness that's beyond even the name. The name shows on a level that's external and outward, because a name is not necessary for myself, a name is necessary for someone else to be able to call him by the name. And then the Rebbe connects it, that number one over the 500, which is the numerical equivalent of Asher, is the idea of delight, enjoyment, and pleasure. That is connected with the very essence, like it's brought down in Chassidus, that there is nothing higher than pleasure and delight. Okay, let us go back to the text of the Maimer, second paragraph, second column, second paragraph in the brackets. Protis yoser, even more in detail, bekeser gufim yesh beis madreges. There are two levels in keser, which we identified before. Keser with the level of ashrei, which means beis pomim ashrei. It's twice ashrei. K'maimer Razal, like the Chazal say, kol parsha shoyz chaviv al David, any parsha, any section, any Perek in Tehillim that was specially beloved by David, Pasach ba ba'ashrei v'siyim ba ba'ashrei. So he began with the word ashrei and concluded with the word ashrei. So we find this in the beginning of Tehillim. Pasach ba'ashrei, nichsiv ashrei ish. He began with ashrei, it says, fortunate is the man, v'siyim ba'ashrei, nichsiv ashrei kol choyse boy. And he concluded with ashrei, it says, fortunate is whoever that shields himself in him. Shields himself, by the way, has to do with the idea of Bitochon, that you are making Hashem your shield, you're not relying on people. The word Ashrecha, that we're saying that Moshe Rabbeinu concluded with Ashrecha Yisrael, Ashrecha could also mean a double time Ashrei. It can be doubled pleasure, doubled enjoyment, doubled levels of Keser, which Chassidus speaks about, Chitzonius HaKeser, or Pnimis HaKeser, the external level of the crown, the inner level of the crown. And what's the external and inner level of the crown? Vinyanim b'Torah, Chitzonius HaTorah, Pnimis HaTorah. These correspond in Torah to the two levels of the external part of the Torah and the inner part of the Torah, Galya v'Sasim, the revealed part, and the concealed part. So the Rebbe concludes, after the brackets, when Nimtza comes out, in the first Perek in Tehillim, the beginning of Tehillim, that you begin reciting Rosh Chodesh, is emphasized the idea of the inner part of the Torah. The way it's not just the inner part of the Torah when you open up a Zohar, but the inner part of the Torah, the way it's an enjoyable, sustaining type of food, that it's be able to be internalized because it's explained intellectually in the teachings of Chabad. Sheba Mizgala Bechinas the Hayechidot, that in the inner part of the Torah, as we know, the Rebbe explains, the Yechidah becomes revealed, the very essence of Torah and the very essence of the Yid and the very essence of Klal Yisrael becomes revealed, which Yechidah, as I mentioned in passing before, is Tainuk Sheba Torah, the delight part of Torah, Pnimius HaKeser, the inner part of Keser. So too concerning the redemption. I will bring you to the land. It's a fifth expression of redemption in addition to the four expressions of redemption in parts of Eira. Keneged Hageula, corresponding to the redemption, skip the parentheses, Asida, the future redemption. Shagam Zem Mudgish Ba'ashrei Ish. The future redemption is also hinted in what it says, Ashrei Ish, in today's Tillim, or in the Rosh Chodesh's Tillim, Mimakim Shechasam Moshe Misham Yisrael David, from the place that Moshe concluded, that's where David HaMelech began. Hakesher the Ashrei Ish Lashrech Yisrael, the connection between Ashrei Ish, which is at the beginning of Tehillim, with Ashrecha Yisrael, that's at the end of the Chumash Dvarim, even though it doesn't really seem to fit. How are you going in the order? There's after Torah, there's all the Sifrei Nevi'im going through, starting from Yeshua and then going all the way out, down to Trei Yasser. And Sharei Bein Sefer Dvarim, Chamish Chum Shetorah, Sefer Tillim, Hashayach L'Ksuvim, Boim Kol Sifrei Nevi'im. So therefore, what do you mean? From the place that Moshe Rabbeinu finished, David began. But there's all these other Sfarim in between. True, the first Sefer in Ksuvim is Tillim. But what about all the Sifrei Nevi'im? Because Moshe and David have a unique bond. Beglal HaKesher v'Hashayches, the Moshe and David, is because of the bond and the connection, association of Moshe and David. Ki yadu, as it's known, Shem Moshe Ugal Rishon, Moshe is called the first Redeemer. With David, Sharayim is the Mashiach. When we talk about David, it indicates the level of Mashiach. It hints at Mashiach. David Malchus Mashiach, David King Mashiach. Who Goel Achron, he's considered the final Redeemer. And we know the Chazal say about it, Goel Rishon, who Goel Achron. The first Redeemer is the same as the final Redeemer. So they're connected. Moshe, which is the first Redeemer, is connected with David HaMelech, the final Redeemer. Top of the second column. We could add to this according to what's explained in Medrash. If the Yidden would have merited, they would have entered Eretz Yisrael through Moshe Rabbeinu in a way of a complete redemption that has no goalless following it. Like it says in the Song of the Sea, in other words, in Oz Yasher, Tiviema, you will bring them, Sitaema, you will plant them, Bahar Nachloscha, in the mountain of your inheritance, Mechain L'Shivtcha Pa'alt Hashem, a place that's ready for your settlement. You made Hashem, Migdash Hashem, Koin Yedacha, the Migdash Hashem, your hands prepared. And we know what's considered the Migdash Hashem, that your hands, that Hashem's hands prepared, the Koil Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, it's going on the third Beis HaMikdash, Koin Yedacha B'Shtei Yadayim. Yedacha means that was with both hands. When will Beis Hamikdash be built with both hands? In the time when Hashem will reign forever. In the future, when the entire reign is His. This means at the time already when they said the Song of the Sea, when they first said Oz Yashiv, even before Matan Torah. They were in such a state and situation, they were ready to enter Eretz Yisrael through Moshe Rabbeinu, and it would have been a complete redemption. But afterwards, the sin caused that there was a detour. But regardless, the Moshe Goel Rishon, who David, the continuation of Moshe, who's the first Redeemer, is David, Memakim Shepasak Moshe, Misham Yischel, David Malcham Mashiach, from the place that Moshe ceased. From there began David, the King Mashiach. In the Ashrei. How does this continuation take place? How do you go from Goel Rishon to Goel Achron, from Moshe to Mashiach? It's through Ashrei, that we said that the Ashrei is Hafotzes HaTorah, spreading Torah. Bayers HaTorah, explaining the Torah, HaChanach, Yachroinel Klisel Oretz, the most final preparation of before entering Eretz Yisrael was Moshe Rabbeinu explaining the Torah, like we said. Ba'ofen the Ashrei, in a way that's enjoyable, fortunate. What does enjoyment have to do? Hainu Aleph, Gam Hafotzes HaTorah b'chinas HaTainug shebeTorah. First of all, what part of Torah are you explaining and spreading? You're explaining that level of Torah which has to do with Keser, which has to do with delight, has to do with Yechida. So that's why it's Ashrei. And Beis, the way how I'm spreading the Torah is in the way of enjoyment. Sha'avoida, the Hafotzes HaTorah, Primis HaTorah mitoch Tainug, that the avoida of spreading the Torah and the inner part of the Torah is out of delight, of Simcha of Tuv and with joy and gladness of heart, like it says, Avatas Hashem Elokecha, B'simcha, Uvetuv Levav, you served Hashem with joy and gladness of heart. Shaydeze Gama Atzlacha, through that, the success is with much more strength and much more power. So, I guess we'll stop over here.